Typography in the built environment is a way to visually portray the story of a city, its history. We lost this relationship between typography, material, and architectural space. What we have now is mostly facades, layers of type over things. And that, I think, is a loss, because it makes every city look the same. In the Arab world, everything is bilingual simply because most of these cultures either want to be seen as international, or they are truly very multicultural societies. So the two scripts represent two very large cultures, and they come together anyway. So why not make them come together on a harmonious way? If we're going to do a research on typography, on a better way of integrating not only two scripts together, but also their role in a society, then we have to come up with something completely new. Because we're working on typography for architectural spaces, you had to look for examples of text or typography that is what we call monumental, made for bigger scale, made for being three-dimensional, made for designed not with a brush. There are on the teams of 15 people in total, a few that are really specialized type designers that are working in digital typography. But there are also a lot of graphic designers and product designers and architects that never really work with text in that way.
You're missing this.
Okay.
Three. Yeah.
So you
separated
that's it.
Exactly.
It's nice to dig into somehow to touch the surface of a culture I don't know yet. For me, that's important. It's a personal importance, especially the gestures which are made and the ethics which are used in the typography are totally different. And it is good to learn from each other. I think the Latin typography can learn a lot from Arabic and the other way around as well.
Both start with the calligraphy and both start with writing in the beginning, and the difference is that the Latin one has been evolved a lot and faster through time and has been studied more and more. The typefaces that you see are quite developed and studied and structured. Unlike the Arabic one, hasn't developed from the calligraphy, so it's kind of hard to make the Arabic script work as a font.
We meet each other. Chinese meets the Japanese, meets the English text, meets the Arabic. So how are we going to design our languages if we are in one room all together? We did not have that situation for centuries, but now it is a common thing. And that means that the type designers of all these routes must reconsider what happens if you start to fuse the kitchen.
Yes, minty.
Minty here. I don't know, I got order here.
We've developed a certain system that you can have split up letters in one language and in another language. So you have the top and the bottom of one side of the two languages and the other side the reverse. And then they would flip each themselves. So you have the Latin script would go when you look at it from this side to that side, the way you read it, and the Arabic from that side to that side on the bottom. They will appear together, but they never synchronize because they have a different flow or a different life or a different rhythm. They are different cultures. And then you have the first things here.
Oh, these are the two halves put together.
Two halves together.
Oh, okay.
And these are those two halves put together.
I don't know what it is about the Arabic. You know why you can't read it? Because by cutting the bottom, that is
Essential for the Arabic.
yeah, they're connected. Now you read them as individual letters, and Arabic is not read that way. But here, when you read the bottom, you also can't tell what the top of the letter is.
ما حأعملها دانس مجموعة سوا لأنه ما بدنا هالقد دواوين.
I think it's a new approach to see type in the environment and not only on a flat paper or like 2D designs. So it was interesting to participate in this 3D spatial typographic systems. The process is different, being now a 3D prototype process and not only a sketching 2D process. It gives it a more sensual, hands-on feeling. It was nice to see the sites, like to see where we can put our work in. The thing is that in the Arab world, there's not enough artistic pieces happening in our public spaces. No one will come to us like, do for us a letter which is like turning in the middle of this plaza and then only for the sake of people to be happy. Like no one will do that in the Arab nations.
Let's go to the pub.
Yeah.
Enough culture. We're ready. It's much cleaner and simpler just to add color. Like you materialize with color what is language and you dematerialize what is connection. It's more abstract.
You can use it for end of the project.
We are trying to find something like a new freedom in a script system, which is based on the idea of Kufi, and then again the Latin culture from our countries is not so free. But we are going to try to, or give it a try to design it so free that the Farsi, the structural three-dimensional Farsi which we're going to design, and the structural three-dimensional Latin script will meet a kind of on the bridge. If you have the skeleton, which is a three-dimensional set of a lot of three-dimensional little forms in both Farsi and Latin, you can decide later on how to dress it in a way. Do you want to have it like here? Do you want to have a bold line? Do you want to have a sharp line? Do you want to have it? Do you want to give it the feel of handwriting? Do you want to, Then if it is very bold, thick, and you start to play with pink or with childish forms, you can easily express an idea of a simple conversation of two young children in both regions.
geven, een soort afgevoel. Maar dat is nou helemaal het is een leeg karkas van een insect wat lang dood is. Hè? Die ziet er ook uit alsof hij af is. Er zit niks meer in.
Maar je kan hier wel hele mooie typografie op aanbrengen, is dat het nog te huur is. Deze wordt op 090909 geopend en dan hebben ze natuurlijk gewoon een kek project nodig. Zal ik de huurhoeder even bellen? Is het regelt?
Jack? Jack, you? We can start?
I don't know what it does to be here, but it helps me to understand Arabic type font a bit more when I walk into these streets with little shops where you can find always the Latin alphabet combined with the Arabic. And then you can see what's actually going on, how it looks, how it feels. And that makes sense, makes totally sense. You can't pick that up from a book. Many times you see the Latin word came first and then the Arabic is adjusted to that. It is again a reason to make a lettering in which it is one gesture and they are both as valuable and they are both doing an attempt to come into one sculpture.
We will see in which way it can create or generate this space and which scale. That's something we still have to explore, but we really would like it to be a spatial thing in itself. So the type is complete when it unfolds in this three-dimensionality.
So our basic element are long strips.
Okay.
And from these long strips, everything is going to come out. And they're only going to exist as letters when they're 3D.
There's no example, there's no such a typeface yet in the world, which can only exist in the 3 dimension.
I'm the youngest of 3 brothers, and when they got to school when they were 6, 7 years old and started to actually make letters to make fish understandable or the word tree, I was really completely amazed by this simple science, these simple drawings. I really liked that. I thought it was magic. That is language, the transparency of science, and I think I always was completely overwhelmed by the possibility of making another drawing which said fish. If you look at the Japanese characters or the Chinese characters or the Arabic type or the Indian versions or Thai type, they're all beautiful because they're so graphic. And we are addicted to form and rhythm, like, you know, the black and white and the dance in it.
Doesn't that look awkward if the horizontals are thicker than the verticals?
No, on the opposite. Especially if you look at the sketches of the Kufi, because of the way the stroke is, like the slant of the stroke, which makes that the vertical is thicker than the horizontal. Like this is like still not the final shape, if you want to make it straight or not, if you want where we want angles, where we want it to be a curve. So, you know, it unifies the whole field, even of the Arabic itself. I couldn't tell like if the Latin looks more like crisp or if the Arabic looks more flowy. This is just different feel than this one. And how is this kind of balanced with what we have on the Latin? The decay should have a loop here, you know. Does it bring it closer to the Kufi?
Part of the outcome of what we do for typographic matchmaking is giving the manual of what we did and how you could give it a follow-up yourself. In a way, you give the grid, a way you explain your grid.
The whole idea of the grid is that a grid is not a design, it is just a kind of going from A to B. So if you want to make this curve, because the whole thing about this form you make now, why it is okay, that because it's meeting all these points. We can connect things, we can make a whole fence of it, we can go around corners, we can make it into a building.
The essence of what we try to do is not to behave as graphic designers so much ourselves, not to be the artist of this project, but to give a designing opportunity to others.
I'm not saying it just yet.
I know, it's
The S, it starts with the S.
S. Space. Spaced out. Okay.
I can show you another example which I think is interesting. In that context, which is this poster here. T-E-G-E-N T-O-N-E-N.
G.
G. It's a lowercase g.
In black.
Yeah. This is the solid shape of a T.
Yeah, and
but this is the rest space of an E.
But what's confusing is that you put this extension, that extension, which actually don't exist.
No, but this is the E.
Oh, yes, okay.
This is a T, this is an O, this is an N. But here, as a white shape,
it's an E, yeah.
This makes this the E.
Right.
So that's sort of the play between things that are there and things that are not there.
But I think this is where we're trying to go. This is purely about text. There's no body language, there's no facial expressions, there's nothing. Which is the same way I send you a text message or I send you an email and you misinterpret the tone of it. So it doesn't carry sense of humor, it doesn't carry any facial expressions.
It depends on the choice of typeface, for instance.
You can put smiley faces on it or something.
No, you can have like a funny typeface and you can have a serious typeface. And I think it's interesting. Can we make a really illegible typeface in the unit, glyph unit, and can we make a acceptable experimental typeface within which is legible?
There needs to be some level of accessibility.
Yeah,
so it's just like fine-tuning that knob of like how legible and how illegible it is. It's not Helvetica, but it's not a bunch of circles and squares on a white piece of paper.
You want to get a bigger nail?
Don't you want to make more? Like 8 or... Ah, okay. Don't you want to make more holes in it?
Yeah.
B?
Suppose.
Here we have har. These are 2 letters. The ha.
What does har mean?
Har. Spice.
An angry dog.
Har. No. Also, it looks like a ship.
Yeah, it looks like a ship.
Yeah.
It's like sails.
It's not necessarily a restriction in the form. I think if you need to take 2 or 3, then that's the way it is. So I was looking at ways of drawing fonts that describe the shape somehow. So you do get the separate strokes, or there might be some different structuring to it, or some way of giving a little bit of depth to it. We seem to be on a path aimed at reducing and reducing and reducing. So maybe we'll have nothing at the end of the project.
can see how 3D it is. Totally different from neon or a normal letterpress letter forms which is thickened. Every letter form in itself is totally free to go where it wants to go, as long as the series as a total has one kind of attitude.
Oh, that's like this.
We steal bendings from each other. So when she likes some gesture in a ribbon from me, and she can use it by looking at it from another angle, then she will use that, and the other way around. A letter form doesn't need to be continuously the same letter form throughout the whole letter alphabet. So an E or an A can change per word actually without losing control. When you compare the M, my M with your whatever it is, then you can see this, there's a similarity.
Let's see that.
That's a similar sign. So
Can we take the M?
once we have a 3D cut drawing, we can execute it in the real world and make it repetitive, make it into a project that can be used by other people. It can be used either in a very small format, very small dimensions, as well as very big. So from a jewel to a building.
For the first time, we're trying to match-make the Arabic and the Latin in a size, in a structure, in a grid, and not in a letter form or a letter stroke drawing. We're trying to have the same impact. If the letters are printed on a wall in English, in Latin, or in Arabic, we will have the same visual impact. So it's a question of negative and positive space, black and white relationship. Each person has to carry on where the others stop. And so it will be like a circle, evolving circle, where each one has to learn from the other's experience.
This is more than a square. Why is this more than a square?
Because it's a mistake. This letter just starts in the middle.
We're gonna shift everything
We're
over.
gonna shift it. I'm gonna I'm gonna combine two letters in one letter. Okay.
I think the word is suffering from not knowing the other. And this type of project, it just will promote tolerance and knowing the other. Know someone else is knowing his language, to see his language.
Let me just throw something in here. Can we talk about the bigger concept?
Yeah,
because
you want to talk about the type.
No, I wanted to talk about the bigger issue. The type, you guys can, it's easier to develop it because we're getting into the minutia of it, which I think is great. I'm not, dismissive of that. It's important to develop it.
No, you just said that it wasn't great and it looks ugly and it doesn't work.
Yeah, you hate it.
No.
It's still the same as we had. It is duality and, since yesterday, ambiguity. Het landschap glijdt aan mij voorbij. Het is donker en alleen. Four word line.
Yeah, it's okay.
De steden die passeren. Ik ben de tekst vergeten. Maar dat geeft niet, want hij verstaat er toch niks van.
This whole typographic matchmaking is an experimental thing. So it does not matter if the 5 teams at the end, that some people really got drowned in a too experimental view to the whole thing, or that there are certain teams which are quite traditional, making good fonts which you can also actually glue on a building. All together, 15 people, 5 teams, it will be interesting if you put everything together. I would like to see it if there is a simple school somewhere in the Arabic world, somewhere in Morocco or in Amsterdam or wherever, that you think, oh my God, this is nice really. I see our little dots, I see our lines, I see that they did a text on the wall with our type.
You want people to be able to take our results and use them. If you have a font, it's a product. If you have a three-dimensional system or a way of making letters, it's a product. And the idea is that every typographic matchmaking should end with a product that other people can use. Because when you create things that you can give to other people to use, you actually instigate change and you help people to go further.
It's an opportunity for us as designers not only to meet but also to test our ideas through other people's eyes and through other designers. But also, since the beginning of typographic matchmaking a year ago, my interest was to engage people in our process, but also to involve communities and to test it on the ground for people to whom this may be relevant. We reached a certain type because this is how far we took it. Their use of our system just confirmed that it's actually a very flexible system and it's a very spatial system. It served the purpose of being a starting point for designers.
What interests me in this project, and what I think also got the designers interested in participating, is the fact that the idea of having a conversation through design with another culture was very seducing and inspiring in some ways, because it teaches you something. When you try to explain your own culture to someone else, it actually makes you understand yourself better. And I think typography itself is a very subtle representation of culture in general. It represents on one level the meaning of texts. The visual aspect of it tells the whole story as well. What kind of insight it gives you into other people's way of thinking, you know. Are these people too romantic? Are they too structured? Are they crazy? Are they fun? If you don't look at it carefully, you don't pay attention, and if you don't have the historical context, you also lose a lot of the communication. And I think for designers in general, this is at the core of what we do. How can we make things that reflect the content of what we're representing, but also add another layer, another meaning on top of that by the way we make it. It's a kind of empowerment. You realize you can do a lot in a very, very subtle way, influence the message in a very subtle way, but in a very powerful way, because people respond to it. They just don't know why.